"Where's Josie at now?" I asked. "Lord, I don't know," she said. "Gone off somewhere with Charles Asher." "He's rich," I said. "Is he?" She leaned forward a bit, as if surprised. "Well, he doesn't act it." "His daddy owns the hardware store and the drive-in. He was in the war, too. Somebody at school told Charles Asher that everybody who went to Vietnam just laid over there and took dope all the time." "Well, that's not true," she said. She looked at the cover of her book, ran her hand over it, like someone wiping fog from a bathroom mirror. "I know it," I said. I loved this story and wanted to tell the rest of it. I worshipped Charles Asher and his 1966 Ford Mustang. "He busted that boy's mouth that said that and got suspended for 2 days. "Well," she said, "I guess he did what he believed in too." And then she looked out on the backyard again, but it seemed to me that she was looking past my mother and the garden, past the ridge of good beech trees that rose up behind our house, even past the air, so thick with heat that it seemed like something solid. I wondered what she was studying on. To break this spell that had befallen her, I felt like I had to keep talking, so I asked her something I've been wondering for a while now. "How come you never got married?" Nell didn't answer me, and I couldn't figure why. This seemed like a perfectly good question to me. Everybody else I knew her age was married. She was still looking beyond everything, still caught up in some faraway thought that sometimes befell her. I repeated myself louder this time. When that didn't work, I said, "Nell!" in a tone my teachers used when someone's attention had turned to the windows, and it worked. She looked at me startled. "What was it?" she asked. I asked my question for the third time. She laughed, and 2 little snorts of smoke came out of her nose. "Because I never wanted to get a divorce, I guess." I didn't understand what this meant either, but nodded anyway. I thought this was the adult thing to do. "Not everybody has to get married, you know," she said. "I mean, it's not required or anything." She said in that way she had of speaking when she felt very strongly about something. She felt strongly about just about everything. Somehow she seemed a bit miffed, too. "Unless you want to have kids," I said. Nell seemed at a loss for a reply to this, which was unusual for her, so she picked her book up off her thigh and held it in one hand before her face. "Well, you ought to go get something to eat. Go on now, buddy," she said. "I'm through talking to you. I need to read." I left her there and went into the shadows of the kitchen. Mom had pulled all the shades in the house to keep the heat out as much as possible. We only had a small air conditioner that hung in the living room window, but it was never turned on unless the heat became unbearable. Even then, it didn't do much more than cool the living room. Sometimes we would all stand in front of the sputtering white box, pulling our collars down so the cool air would wash over us. It hadn't been hot enough for that yet this summer. I loved the kitchen when it was quiet and free of everyone else. It seemed to be the cleanest room in the house, with its scent of lemon joy and the white stove, which was so shiny and clean. It looked like something that ought to be in a doctor's office. I took a loaf of bunny bread from the bread box and fixed myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on a melamine plate. I shook out a line of Pringles in the space between the 2 triangles of bread. Nell had left the gallon jug of sweet tea on the counter. She often forgot to put things away, so I poured some of that in a jelly jar. I sat in the kitchen without turning on a light and ate, enjoying the quiet. Our house was not often quiet, especially in the summer when Charles Asher practically lived there, and my mother's best friend Stella would come in the door without knocking, already talking before she'd even pulled the latch, or Edie ran in to ask me to go somewhere. There was nothing now except for the knit, knit, knit of the stove clock and a redundant but comforting drip from the kitchen faucet. Since it was so quiet, I could think properly, and I tried to chalk up things that I might do over the rest of the summer. I thought about how Edie, my best friend, had said I ought to ask my father about the war, but it seemed the better thing to do would be to venture into my parents' bedroom and steal the letters that Daddy had written to my mother while he was overseas. I knew this would be wrong with me. My mother was very strict about no one ever going into their bedroom. But Daddy wouldn't ever say anything about the war, and now he was having these bad nightmares, and I needed to know more. I chewed on my sandwich and considered all the options, and thought I would wait until the day after tomorrow, as I knew that Fridays, town day, were when my mother and Stella always loaded up and went to the Piggly Wiggly together. Daddy would be at work, and Nell and Josie were sure to be out doing something. I'd invite Edie to join me. From outside, I could hear Nell singing. I crept to the door and looked out. She had spread the book over her thigh again and was lying back now, her hands folded atop her chest like someone in a casket. Her eyes were closed, but she was singing. Go lightly from the ledge, babe. Go lightly on the ground. The Bob Dylan song she played sometimes on her little green record player that ran on batteries. Her folded hands patted out the beat on her chest. Listening to her, I realized that Nell was maybe the saddest person I'd ever known, although she hid it well. I thought maybe she was sad for the same reasons as me, because sometimes there was too much goodness in the world to bear. Thank you.